So tell me about your organisation, SEM. What are the sort of projects and areas you work in South Sudan?
Our SEM's main project that we're involved in is in disability work. In disability work, we do rehabilitation, which we use an approach which is called community-based rehabilitation. And that enables us to work with adults with disability and also children with disability. And in rehabilitation, we provided assistive devices to both adults and also for children with disabilities. We also provide devices for learning for children with disabilities. Also support with in community in trainings, especially for parents of children with disabilities on economic empowerment. We use VSLA, which is the Village Savings and Loan Association strategy to empower them so that they're able to do something by themselves. So disability is our main approach program, and we do a lot of inclusion, disability inclusion in various aspects of work that we do. Apart from disability, we are also now currently involved in food security. The food security and the livelihood program that the SEM does is integrated with economic empowerment and peace building. So we provide tools, we provide trainings for people with, for communities that we work among, but we also have some specific targeted projects that go towards people with disabilities.
Tell me a little bit more, Gulliver, about your work around inclusion. Do people with disabilities face a lot of discrimination in South Sudan?
Yes, there's so much exclusion of people with disabilities in various aspects of life in South Sudan. So we try as much as possible, engaging the government, also engaging other organizations, engaging the community, so as to support inclusion of people with disabilities in South Sudan, including areas issues of policy. We have also been working on policy issues on disability policy in South Sudan. We have also worked on policies for children, for inclusive education. So there are various aspects of disability and inclusion that we are trying our best to work with other stakeholders so as to support people with disabilities, including children with disabilities.
How does that discrimination manifest? What are the real life challenges that people with disabilities face?
The real challenges that they face is in the issues of accessing services. Mm-hmm. You'll find that the issues of even in terms of health issues is a challenge. Accessing education is a challenge for children with disabilities. All other services is a challenge. So not many people, including our government, are planning for people with disabilities. In many cases, they are left out of services. So they continue struggling to access most of the services that are in the country, being provided either by the government or even by other agencies.
And so, how do you educate people? How do you change minds and get them to see this issue differently?
Well, it's not easy, but we try our best to raise awareness in the community. We conduct trainings even for other governments, or for the government, and also for other organizations on issues of people with disabilities, so that they are able to think when they are or involve them when they are planning projects, or thinking of doing any piece of work in the community, so that they are part of the whatever activity that is taking place. However, changing people's mindset, changing attitudes takes time. It's a slow process. So we keep on working towards that. And in some cases, some areas, in some cases, we are succeeding.
And working in South Sudan, which has had so much war and conflict in the past decades, how does that make it more difficult for you to do your job? You know, to help people with disabilities, to help deliver development. You know, what are the challenges of doing that in an area which has had so much conflict?
The challenges are a bit enormous because for a year now, the issues of access is improving. But some 2 years back, it has been a real challenge for us to have access to the various locations in the country because of conflict. It affects almost all other agencies. Access was a big challenge, but it's slowly improving now because of the peace agreement which has been signed. So we are accessing most of the locations, and NGOs and the staff are moving. However, there are challenges still on the issues of logistics because most roads in South Sudan is not accessible. The conditions are not all that easy. So those are some of the things that makes the work a bit challenging for us as an organization.
And I mean, for you personally, are there times when you felt in danger doing your job?
Yes, in terms of security, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can you give any examples, you know, just so we can see, you know, just to give us a flavor of the situation?
Yeah, well, when we move from location to location, delivering services or goods to communities, at times we are stopped at some roadblocks by armed people who are armed, and it's hard to tell whom they are. And they would demand at times for either lift to be moved from one location to another. At times they would want to be bribed, to be given, they want to be bribed or given something to allow you to move on. So there are different scenarios that at times we face. And we have always tried to maintain our peace, to be humble and negotiate with the groups to allow our team to go. At times we can be kept at one location for 3 hours or so. So those are some of the challenges that at times we face providing services in the field. Yes.
And I think, as you said, there is now a very hard-won kind of peace agreement in South Sudan after, you know, the years of conflict. I know it took a lot to get there. I know the Pope got involved. Is this an optimistic time in South Sudan? Do you feel that there is, you know, after all these years of war, there is hope on the horizon?
Yeah, yes, especially after involvement also of the church, the Pope in the recent with the group that was left out of the revitalized peace agreement. Mm-hmm. We have seen some good signs because the group has been engaged and they have continued to negotiate with the government. The recent another group 2 days ago in Nairobi, they signed on the 8th of this month. They were able to sit again with the government with support of the church. So we could see that there are some good signs. They have signed they made another press statement accepting to continue with the negotiations, so that they eventually will be part of the revitalized peace agreement. So there's some kind of sign of hope that we hope that things will eventually change.
And, you know, like all countries, and more so South Sudan has big problems, but what is good about being from South Sudan? What makes you happy and proud to be from South Sudan?
Well, I think South Sudan, we love the country. We love our country. We love our food, the local customs. We are very hospitable. So I think those are some few things that I can mention about the country, but not much positive things at the moment because of the ongoing situation in the country.
And so the project that SCIAF are supporting this Lent, you know, and the one in Mundry, can you tell us a little bit about that, about the children it's working with, and you know, what kind of impact will it have there?
Yeah, the children with the disabilities that are being targeted, they are facing various challenges. There are children with the physical impairment. There are those with hearing impairment. There are those who are having cases of epilepsy. There are those having cases of cerebral palsy. So there are different categories of children with the disabilities that is being targeted by the project in the locations that we're going to implement. That includes Mundry East, Mundry West, and Meridi and Iba. Yeah.
So for a child with, you know, hearing impairment or epilepsy, how will the work of this project make their life better?
We hope to see that the children's situation has improved, especially the education aspect of the children and the participation of these children at their social life, and also participation of the parents of children with disabilities, the higher community engagement into seeing the positive aspects of the project. Those are some of the things that we would like to see that happening at the end of the project.
And, you know, when you think about your work, I mean, are there any, you know, think about the things that make you feel really good about your job, that make you feel proud of what you are doing. Are there any stories or children that come to mind as, you know, as just really positive examples of your work?
Yeah, yes, we have seen quite some positive aspect of the work that the SAM has been doing in disability work. We have seen the children with disabilities, some who has moved from the program. Currently today, there's one guy is currently now in Juba. He went through the program that the SAM was running. Later, he joined SAM as a CBR worker. He worked in the CBR program, and with some support, we continued with further studies. And currently, he's one of the executive directors of one of the organizations, national NGOs in South Sudan. So we're very proud of him, and we have shared his stories. So we're very happy about the progress that what has changed his life. So there are many other stories, people who have come through the program. Some are doing some, there's one person who is currently now working as an accountant with the mission, with MAF, Mission Aviation Fellowship. So we are very proud of what we have seen through very small things that we do, changing their lives and improving their future.
And, you know, in the communities that you can't reach, that you haven't been able to reach yet, if children with disabilities there, you know, what are their prospects? You know, how difficult is it for them to reach those kind of heights without the support?
it's quite difficult because not much has been happening for children with disabilities in South Sudan. There are very few cases where children with disabilities are engaged in the mainstream schools, very minimum. And with the awareness cases that we are doing and also engaging the government with other stakeholders, at least we are seeing now in some towns like Juba, you can see some few things happening, but not in remote locations outside the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, why is it so difficult for them to access mainstream education? Is it just for people? You know, what are the barriers?
Well, the barriers are people with disabilities are looked. Some of the cases are their parents. They look down at the children with disabilities. They don't give them the opportunity to join the school, to go to school. They see they cannot do, and they might not be able to do anything better. So they push the other children without disabilities to schools, but most of them are those with disabilities are left out at home. So it's an issue of attitude that they see these children may not be able to do anything. Some parents may have limited resources, so they give priority to other children without disabilities. So those are some of the different families face different challenges. The barriers. Some it is the school structure that may not be able to allow children to go to school. There are others who face challenges of mobility. They may not be able to go to school because the schools are far, so they may not be able to have any transport to move them from the home location to the schools. So there are various challenges that the different parents face.
And you know, for you and Sam, would you like to be able to reach all these children? Do you think it's possible that you could reach all these children?
We may not be able to do it ourselves. So we in the country we offer trainings. We do seminars to engage other stakeholders, other organizations. We try to raise awareness at different forums, talking about people with disabilities, children with disabilities, so that there are also other agencies who are also going to get involved. But we do a lot with the government. We try because the government is supposed to provide most of the services that we are also trying to complement. So we try as much as possible to engage the government, but currently, because of the ongoing situations in the country, the government has low, the disability program or people with disability has low priority on government budgets. So not much is happening from the government side at the moment, but for sustainability of the disability program, we would like to see that the government is getting seriously engaged so that the people with disability will be part of the services that is going to be provided by the government and also by other institutions.
And you know, and for Sam, why did you decide to make disability a focus for your organization? You know, because there are many good causes that you could work on, I'm sure, but why was disability you felt the one you wanted to focus
on? When SAM began in around 1988, it is the focus was people with disabilities. That was the first service that SAM began. First, it was among the South Sudanese refugees in Uganda and also in Kenya. Then later into South Sudan for people who are maimed by landmines and also war. So the SAM had compassion for people with disability from the very beginning when the institution was being established. So it became one of its core programs, and now niche in what we are doing to people with disabilities.
And I take it that the years of conflict and landmines have have increased the number of people with disabilities. Is that in South Sudan? Is that right?
Yeah, yes, that's true. WHO talks of about 15% of population with disabilities, but at times we think in South Sudan, because of the war, might be slightly higher than that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And so what are your plans for the future? What do you hope to achieve, in the next 5 years, next 10 years with SEM? What are your goals, your dreams?
Well, our dreams, we would like to see but we would like to see the people, the society, which is very united, seeing, having respect, and also dignity of people with disabilities. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think we can all, that's something that we would all like to see. Gulliver, that was fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing so clearly and freely. I'd like to open up and see if does anyone else have any questions they would like to ask Gulliver. You can type them in the chat. You can raise your hand physically. You can raise your hand virtually at the bottom with the reaction button. But if anyone has any questions, it would be great to hear from you. And I'm sure Gulliver.
Dennis Canavan here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Dennis.
Many years ago, I had the privilege of visiting Sudan when it was all one country, and I was at that time I was a member of a delegation from the Foreign Affairs Select Committee of the British House of Commons, and we did a report on famine in the Horn of Africa, and there was a particular problem in South Sudan at that time, because quite apart from many of the indigenous people suffering from starvation, there were huge numbers of people coming in from neighboring countries like Ethiopia and Chad, and the Sudan government had set up refugee camps where there were possibly hundreds of thousands of people, displaced people, starving people in these refugee camps. I wonder, please, if Gulliver could tell us whether these refugee camps still exist in some form of another, or is the population now more settled?
Thank you. In Sudan, there are still displaced people because of the current conflict in Ethiopia. So there are still refugees in some parts of Sudan, especially the eastern part. Previously, there were also, I think, these refugees from Eritrea in Sudan, but because of the situation improving up in the country, most of them started returning back home. In Sudan, in South Sudan, we have we still have displacement because of the war. There are still huge camps in the country in different locations. So if you go to Barakzal, if you go to Upper Nile, if you go to Jungule, if you go to Mundri, even in Juba, there are huge camps which are hosting internally displaced persons. We also have refugees in across the border in Uganda, in Kenya. But in the country, we also have some refugees from the neighboring countries like Ethiopia. There are also refugees in South Sudan, in Juba. It's slightly outside Juba. There's a camp for refugees from Ethiopia and also from DRC Congo. So there are refugees still, there are also camps still existing in South Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a sense of the numbers of internally displaced South Sudanese people and also the numbers that have left the country, Gulliver?
I think I may not have it off it, but I think it's slightly over 2 million, I think. Okay. Yeah.
In a population of about 11 million, the country is about 11 million,
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. That was fascinating. And thank you, Gulliver. Anyway, does anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Any questions? Oh, we've got a question in the chat here from David. Thank you, David. What items or mobility aids do SEM supply that you, Gulliver, think make the biggest difference? What items or types of support would you like to supply more of? Yeah. So, what mobility aids make the biggest difference, and what items for disabled children are really make a difference?
I think we do a lot. We do support provision of wheelchairs. That is, I think, is one of the most because children with the physical disabilities, the numbers are also a bit high. But also we support with the provision of crutches. Is also things that also support them, and we also do provide white canes. So those are some of the items that we provide. But for learning materials, we also provide brailles. Yes.
Yeah. I've been quite fortunate to travel with SCIAF in Ethiopia and some other countries, and I think it can be hard for us in Scotland to understand how great the mobility granted by a wheelchair or crutches can be, because it opens up the whole world to them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I got a question from Scotland.
Yes.
How many of them were learning disability in Bethany School, or are they in maintain Catholic school, or maintain a meta-domination school? A meta-domination school means a school run by the state sector with met-faith. A state Catholic school funded by the taxpayer, but for Catholic, and then you get state Bethany school for met-faith. Well, that mean, what kind of school do they go to? Because this is after a Catholic adult, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, great question, Craig. Thank you. I mean, obviously, at SCIAF, we work and support people of all faiths and none. And here in Scotland, the school system is there are Catholic schools and there are schools for people of all faiths. What is the school system like in South Sudan, Gulliver? That's a good question.
The schools, we don't have now currently we don't have special schools for children with disabilities. We try as much as possible now to mainstream in the mainstream schools. We encourage them to join the mainstream schools. However, there are some special cases where the child may not be able to cope well in the mainstream schools, and we are still trying with the government to see possibility whether there could be some services offered at the same school, but if there are only 3 or 4 children with some special cases may not be able to cope well with others, whether they can be they can be teachers who will be teaching them, but at the same school. Though currently there are no special schools.
And who runs the schools? Are they run by the churches? Are they run by the state? What's the structure of the schools?
Yes, the schools are run by the government. The majority of the schools are run by the government, but the good number are also run by the churches, and there are some few private schools.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Craig. Do we have anyone else get any questions for Gulliver?
Yeah, this school, I will say, accessible then. If people in wheelchair, I guess they need to be a door with a ramp.
Yeah, so are the schools accessible to children in wheelchairs? Do they have ramps? How accessible are they for wheelchair users?
Yes, not all the schools, but where we work, we try as much as possible to build ramps, to construct ramps, so that the schools are accessible to children with disabilities. But those are some of the challenges that children with disabilities face in most schools. There's no accessibility for children with disabilities.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions?
They got a disability. Are they diagnosed with a disability, and do they know what kind of disability have they got, like to autism, to Down syndrome, with a label, because it means they get the like type of or teaching, that kind of thing?
That's another good question, Craig. So how diagnosed are with disabilities are children with disabilities in South Sudan? How much access to healthcare professionals do they have? Do people know if they've if they've got, say, autism or Down syndrome? Are those widely diagnosed, or are they undiagnosed?
Yes, in South Sudan we have challenges also at the health facilities, because we don't have professionals to do proper diagnosis. So those are some of the challenges that is across the country. Where we work with, we engage, we have services of physiotherapists. We also have occupational therapists, and now we also have one person whom we trained in orthopedics in Tanzania, so he's also back in the country. So we have those people with those knowledge, so they're able to assess children with disabilities. We do our own assessments and see what how to handle the various situations. But we try as much as possible to work closely with the government to those facilities through our CBR workers, so that they are able to offer services in our absence.
Okay. Thank you, Gulliver, and thank you, Craig. Actually, those were really useful and insightful questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to, if there's no more questions, I think I might have to,
if there's no one else.
Oh, Dennis. Oh, we're still here, Dennis.
I wonder if Gulliver could tell us about the relationship between the government of South Sudan and SCIAF. Is the government supportive of SCIAF's work? The reason I ask is that from past experience, I have seen governments in some of the developing countries where they're not very supportive of aid agencies such as SCIAF. So my question is there good cooperation with the South Sudan government, or are they in any way obstructive of the excellent work that SCIAF's doing?
That's a good question. Thank you very much. The government of South Sudan has a very high respect to church organizations in the country, and also those working with organizations like SCIAF. We have a number of organizations in the country here, like CAFOD, like Caritas, even South Sudan here, and many others. And the government has very high respect to them, including the services that we work. We receive a lot of support from the government, not necessarily material support, but through encouragement and being part of what we are doing in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question about United Nations, how like are you authority to represent people with the government, technically, and working for the government, or are you just go to the government? Because if you just go to the government, you need the government backing to do the aid work in South Sudan. But when you've been hoping to under United Nations and see you to work for Oxfam and now you work for UN Aid, so that means you're technically the government, because he has to have people in it who technically in South Sudan who technically recommend the government, mean what for the government. Like a Catholic lawyer here in Scotland.
What is SEM's relationship with the government, Gulliver? That's a great question. How do you work with the government? I mean, how close are you to them? How close is that relationship?
We work very well with the government, very closely. Government participates in our meetings with the community. We have participation of the government in also in our meetings, like the board of directors meeting. At times, we also invite the government representatives to be part of some issues that we discuss and which touches on our interventions. We got invitations from the government to come and do presentations on issues of disability, even on the policy issues when there are forums to discuss the policies on people with disabilities. We have normally special invitation from the government to come and be part of the discussions. So we have very cordial relations with the government.
That's good. That's good to hear. I think we're coming to the end of our time. So Al, our Chief Exec, do you want to say a few words just as we wrap up?
Just before we do, Ian, I think there is one more question. Yes. Sorry, you're called Opto12 on the screen.
Sorry.
One more question there.
Oh, that's myself, yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Sorry.
It's no problem. My name's John Forrester. Apologies for being sort of obscure at OPTO12. My question really is to ask Gulliver, how much do you depend on the families of the children and the adults you work with? And I suppose that's really quite a big part of how the organization works locally. Were you able to hear that?
Yes, depending on parents of children with disabilities.
Yes.
Our structure that we work with through the CBR workers, we depend a lot on the parents or families of children with disabilities, because we raise awareness to the parents or families on issues of the child, and the rehabilitation process, they have to fully get involved, because the CBR workers spends at times one hour or 2 hours at most, maybe with the child. But most of the time, we support the parent or the family of the child with disability in the process, so that the rehabilitation process, they are part of it and succeeds well in our absence. So we depend also quite a lot on them. We work together. They are part of the rehabilitation process of the child.
I want to ask you something. Do you know if you have got a social worker allocated?
No.
A social worker.
So in Scotland, Gulliver, people with disabilities and people generally might well have a social worker allocated to them. How is, I mean, are there a lot
Yes.
of workers in
Yes.
Sudan? What is the structure there?
Yes, we work with the civil workers, which is more of like the social workers, and they have a number of children with disabilities or adults with disabilities that they work with. So there's a work plan that normally in a week they would visit certain homes of the clients that they work with and they support. So yes, they are allocated a number of people with disabilities, children with disabilities in the week, during the week, and they have to visit them at their home or at their school environment. So that is how it works when we're working with the people with disabilities and the children with disabilities.
Okay. Al.
Thank you, Ian. And first and foremost, thank you very much, Gulliver. It's great to have you online today, and nothing brings South Sudan alive for people back here in Scotland like hearing it firsthand from you. So thanks very much, and thanks for answering all the questions. You can tell from the number of questions and the depth of them what level of interest there is in everything you're doing and the level of support that you enjoy from people here in Scotland. So thanks very much. I think, you know, you've all heard from Gulliver firsthand. You don't need me to reiterate very much at all, but South Sudan, we know, is the youngest country in the world. It's also been a country which has fought for its independence and has been racked by conflict since independence. And on the UNDP poverty index is one of the poorest in the world. And I'm really proud of the work that SEM does working in Mundrydare, and again, through our partners, through our church networks, the reach we have into some of the countries which are among the poorest and where the need is so great. And I think the work we're doing through SEM, and we know from our heritage of Catholic social teaching, you know, an integral human development approach to development, that disability is yet another level of that contributes to poverty or marginalisation of people. So our work with people of disability, even in the poorest and most marginal communities, disability is yet another layer upon that. I hope you've all enjoyed it well, at lunchtime this morning, this afternoon, wherever we are. Please do remember the wee box. As you know, through this programme, we're trying to help 6 schools. That's £300,000 of schools. So I hope to all of you, you can give generously and help support the wee box appeal so that we can help Gulliver, help the people in the villages, do all this work to really improve the lives of people with disability and their ability to enjoy a decent education. So that's the thrust of the wee box this year, and I hope you all will support us very generously. It just remains with me for me to thank you all, supporters and staff alike, for making the time today and for joining Gulliver. Gulliver, it's been great to have you. And once travel becomes possible again, I really look forward to getting to Mundry myself and seeing it firsthand and coming back and being able to tell those stories. Yeah. And who knows, we might even be able to have you to Scotland as well, and people can meet you in person.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. One final thing I'll just say, if you enjoyed today, this time next week, we're going to have another Q&A with one of our partners as part of our actions to mark 10 years of the Syrian civil war. A woman we work with in Lebanon who's from Syria, Mais Amos, who's a fantastic partner, like Gulliver, a really inspirational figure doing work. We'll be talking to her and hearing about her work here. But thank you again, Gulliver. That was wonderful. Great to talk to you. And thank you all very much for coming. It's great to be part of this work, and you know, which is so important. So enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gulliver. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.